Well, hello, everybody. My name is Mark Podlasly. My ancestral name is Tatsha, and I'm a proud member of the Untitled First Nation here in British Columbia, Canada. And I am here with my good friend, JP Gladu.
Fantastic. You were calling me your good friend behind the scenes there, Mark. I thought I was one of your best friends. My name is JP Gladu. I'm an Anishinaabe from Bingui-Niashi, Anishinaabek, which I'm actually calling in from my First Nation, which is about 2 hours northeast of Thunder Bay. My name, Indigenous name, is Mokwateh. It means bear heart. And all teasing aside, Mark, it is always good to share the screen with you, my friend. So let me kick off with, I don't know, we've got a number of folks here listening in, and the conference is really shaping up, and I know you and the team have been doing incredible work to get it to a place that is world class. Can you tell us a little bit more about the conference this year? What amazing topics are going to be covered? And I know there are some, as I mentioned, world-class speakers coming, and it's going to be fantastic. I know, but why don't you dive in a little bit for us?
Well, thanks. The conference this year, our Industry Indigenous Engagement event, is toward net zero by 2050. And this topic is increasingly of interest to not only Indigenous people, but everyone across North America. So we're co-hosting it this year with an organization very similar to the First Nations Major Projects Coalition, and that is First Peoples Worldwide out of the University of Colorado in the United States. And the reason we're addressing this topic is because the increasing changes to the weather, the growing demand for energy independence at this point, where we're going is going to demand all of us to come together and help move our climate to a stable situation. So the 4 topics we're going to be discussing at the conference this year include energy transition, minerals and metals, primarily towards electric vehicle batteries, finance, how do we finance these issues, and then the policy and regulations needed to streamline the solutions across not only Canadian provinces, but into the United States and across federal and provincial and state boundaries.
Yeah, these, I mean, absolutely. These are the most poignant questions. And, there's certainly a lot of pressure on us to start getting this right. I mean, we've certainly had our challenges. And, Mark, the Indigenous voice in all of this is fundamental. We talk about, a lot of these policies is actually having Indigenous people at the helm when it comes to energy transition. Our backyards are filled with all sorts of great mineral potential to support the transition. Finance is one of our biggest challenges, is getting access to affordable capital to make sure that we're equitable players in the way that we develop our resources to make this transition. And even currently in the current suite of hydrocarbons that we're utilizing for energy in the world. And of course, policy, UNDRIP in BC is being unfolded, and nationally we're talking about the United Nations Declaration. Again, kudos to you and the team for bringing this all together.
So when we have this conference on April 25th and 26th, we will have in person this year. At this point right now, we have about 700 people registered. And you're right, we have some amazing speakers. The conferences that we put on at the Major Projects Coalition, our pride in them is that we have thoughtful discussions between industry leaders and Indigenous leaders to come to some sort of solution. So you pointed out the energy transition, the issues that are facing us around accessing minerals. Those are of deep concern to Indigenous people in the United States, in Canada, because you're right, those resources will be on our territories. And we know that if the solutions are going to be on our territories, we want to have a say in those projects, not only from the environmental side, but from the economic side. So some of these speakers that are coming will address very specific questions about what it's going to take to save the climate from their specific sectors. These are learning events, and we're very proud of that at the Coalition for having the ability to put these on and the ability to contribute to, as you pointed out, the solutions that are going to affect all of us. From an Indigenous perspective, we are well aware that in order to get these projects to market in time to reach what Mark Carney has called up to $140 trillion in investments that are coming, we're going to have to work together as a country, as a continent, to make sure that we have these solutions in place for the next generations.
Mark, you talk about the $140 trillion that is out there. I mean, that should be sufficient if we're able to find a place to put it all around the world to help us transition. And, I want to say, thank you. Folks don't know that you and I work together with the Energy Futures Lab, the Indigenous group that I chair, that your voice is so crucial on. And, we do have a suite of current energy assets, and throwing the baby out with the bathwater just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But certainly the urgency to get to a place where we're transitioning and accessing that capital, that $140 trillion. The speakers that are coming to the table in the end of the month, can you tell us about the types of issues that we're going to, we've got the broad level issues, but what it's going to take to get at least some of those trillions over to Canada to be attractive for that capital, and the responsibility of a country that is so well endowed with natural resources.
So a lot of the challenges, you pointed them out already, and I know we do work together on energy issues, but beyond the energy transition issues, EV batteries, electric vehicles. Electric vehicles is the second largest contributor to carbon in North America, the exhaust from our vehicles. We have to get those vehicles onto electric vehicle power, and to do that, we're going to need batteries. And to do that, we're going to need minerals. The demand apparently in the next 8 years is going to be up to 14 times more nickel, copper, iron ore, lithium. And First Nations are in territories. Our territories have those minerals. So we're going to have speakers in here, executives from mining companies, specialists in projecting where growth demand is going, specialists who are also very good at telling where the supply chain opportunities will come. Because it's not just a question of the mining being an opportunity. What about the manufacture of these batteries, the preparation of the materials, the recycling of those, the servicing? All of that is a potential for Indigenous people and overall to our general economy. And if we want to actually capture those opportunities, we're going to have to start asking questions now and starting to plan forward. The $143 trillion will go to those places, those countries, those communities who want the investment and are prepared to make it work. And as Indigenous people, we've seen what can happen to our territories if we are not involved in the planning from the get-go. So this is the time to ask those questions and see what's coming. Yeah. That's what we're going to be looking towards. And what's going to be exciting about it is many of these people, the executives, the tribal leaders from the United States, Indigenous leaders from here, and some of the politicians are at the table as these decisions are being made. So we'll have a chance to find out front row seat what's going on.
Yeah. Absolutely. We talked about, last year's conference, and I think it set it up really nicely for this year's conference. I know you and your co-chair, Sherry, are going to do an incredible job guiding us through these conversations. Many of us live this every day. As you know, Mark, in my community, we've got lithium mining here in my First Nation, and our neighboring First Nations have agreements with them, and we work together and to take advantage. And as you just alluded to, if we don't get these relationships right, if we don't get the processes right, if we don't really carve out progressive pathways together, we're going to be at loggerheads. We're going to hear from some of these experts about the cutting edge practices that are happening. Like, for instance, in my First Nation with a couple lithium companies, one of them, we have a million shares for each First Nation of warrants at 11 cents, and they're trading at about 12 cents right now. If that goes back up, that's going to be, we all win, because the company will be benefiting, our communities will be benefiting, we'll be contributing to the nickels and the battery market. And then again, with another one of our mining partners, another lithium company, we've given them access through our reserve to actually access and, to talk about that company in a way that, to support the environmental assessment process and speeding up that process, all these things, because, you and I've talked about this. We just don't have the time to mess around. So I'm really excited about what we're going to hear from all these various experts.
Yeah, exactly. And because we're going continental this year, as opposed to last year we were very much focused on Canada, the examples of innovations in net zero from Indigenous concerns in the United States are incredible. We now have one of the communities up here speaking, Standing Rock, will be talking about their wind farms. And they're looking right now at putting the first tranche of 530 megawatts in place, but they're going to go to 1,000 megawatts. There's tribal interests in the United States who are now acquiring the transmission electric systems in California, who will be delivering that energy to urban centers around Los Angeles. There are other examples of geothermal, not only in Canada we have, but in Alaska, where there's 30 megawatts or 15 megawatt facilities being put in place. And these are owned by Indigenous people or have substantive equity interests in them. Because as Indigenous people in Canada or the United States, we have a vested interest to ensure that the climate is stable. So these sorts of innovations, how do these Indigenous people find the capital to do this? Where's the talent coming from? Where is the market? How can Indigenous success be success for everyone? Because the climate, it doesn't matter if you're in downtown Toronto or Northern Ontario or central Saskatchewan, it's all the same climate. We've got a chance here to contribute to everyone's well-being equally. And that's what we want to talk about.
You're absolutely right. I mean, pollution doesn't know borders, air, water, and we've got to get good at using the best, cleanest resources absolutely during this transition time. And one of the things I want to highlight, you talk about some of the policy conversations here. Our fearless leader, who we've come to absolutely adore and appreciate with her because of her leadership, her steadfast commitment to her community, and things like geothermal, the amazing Chief Charlene Gale, who's going to be kicking us off. But you again, kudos to you and the team for bringing in some exceptional speakers. And the one that I want to draw attention to is the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Energy. I mean, wow. I mean, this is, again, to that idea that pollution and energy, we've got to think more continental when we think about what we're going to do together. So I understand you're going to be becoming a leading authority on energy in the U.S., which is great.
Thank you. A lot of the questions, you're right, they're continental. So the energy that we have in Canada, we provide a lot of energy to the United States and exports, and they provide back a lot of the trade and materials that we need to expand not only our energy transition, but the financing. A lot of that will come from the capital markets in the States. We have in Canada the resources. You were right. They have the manufacturing abilities. Some of that is here, but the majority of it is in the United States. So the Secretary of Energy coming to speak to us is a massive opportunity for us as Indigenous people to ask questions about where do we fit in the future of the energy systems on this continent. You only have to look at the news right now. Energy, global issues right now are rocking the markets. Natural gas, oil, electricity. Where are we going to find that supply? And how is it that we're going to provide safety and security to the entire continent? That's what the Secretary will be talking about. And we will be asking her questions, not only about U.S. tribal interests and energy, but what's the role for Canadian Indigenous people in providing that stability, which gives all of us security.
Yeah, I mean, that even applies to critical minerals for sure.
Exactly.
And the importance of our countries working together in this geopolitical space that is very uncertain these days.
Very uncertain. And some of the questions that have come up around minerals from the United States, the Biden administration last week issued a statement out around nickel and other critical minerals where they are looking for security of supply that can provide for continental stability. And we are, in Indigenous people in Canada, holders of that territory. So what's the role then that we start to play in continental security, continental environmental protection, and also in the economic generation of jobs for all of us? And just to point out, the coalition is not pro-industry at all counts. We are here, we are pro-smart industry, industry that affects our communities, that is informed by our traditional values, by our elders, by our ways. And if that's done properly, then there's a win for everyone. And that's what we're focused on at this conference.
100%, my friend, 100%. You know how passionate I am when you talk about our role and everything. And you know how passionate I am about board governance. And I was just recently joined the Institute for Corporate Directors just at the end of winter last year, and being on the board of Suncor and a couple of mining companies. That one of my favorite panels that I've ever been able to moderate in my career was the one on directors. And the sad thing about it was I had most of the publicly traded Indigenous directors on one panel, which is really unfortunate. And that's really about identifying the shortfalls through this conference as well, making sure that we understand where we are today. Obviously, the handful of the 9 of us, I think there are, and growing, is just not appropriate anymore. And the role of Indigenous leadership to make sure that we're going in a path that makes sure that we're in these leadership positions. That's what's really exciting, because when people tell me that, there's, when they say, well, we can't find any Indigenous people to sit on our boards, I'm like, what? Come to a conference like the FNMPC. You'll see all this incredible Indigenous talent at the front of the stage. and also walking the floors in the side meetings. Just tell me a little bit what's going to be different from last year to this year, and what people can expect. Just some of the little
Well,
taste.
first of all, we'll be walking the halls. We'll be in
Yes.
person. It's
Oh,
been
that's
a
true.
number of years, and I have to tell you, it's been a bit strange going out into public in the past month. The restrictions have been more or less lifted here in British Columbia, where we will host the conference in Vancouver at the Western Bay Shore on April 25th and 26th. But what we're going to be very much focused on this time, as opposed to last time, are the on-the-ground applications of how this will work. How will net zero work on the ground with Indigenous people, non-Indigenous people? How will it affect in our cities? As we start to talk through the energy transition, what does that mean? What are the power sources that we will be transitioning to? And a lot of the work you and I have done, it is a transition. It will take some time. It's not a matter of switching one system to another. We have to know how to do that in a manner that affects all of us, climate, but also jobs and communities. That's one. Second, in terms of the electric vehicle transition, how does that work? How will we get these things in place? How will it be done in a manner that doesn't harm our current employed individuals, our jobs, and our economy? And how do we grow that in a way that isn't trading one problem for another? We can't go into the situation we've done in the past where we've had environmental footprints that have just been imposed on people from somewhere else. This is a new world. And I think what the COVID pandemic has really shown us is that there's no place that's remote anymore. Everybody's connected. Everything we do is integrated somewhere. And even now, with remote working and traveling, we've seen opportunities for our Indigenous communities and even non-Indigenous communities further from the cities who have an equal stake in everything that's going on environmentally, economically, logistically, shipping, everything. Yeah. So what you're going to see at this conference now is very hands-on applications of the values that we deem important to our society. And we'll hear that from Indigenous, private sector, and government.
Yeah. Well, listen, my friend, I'm really excited about, I get to see your handsome face every once in a while in person, not nearly as much, but again, kudos to the team at FNMPC. We know our fearless leader Nilo's getting back up on his feet in a great way. We can't wait to see him there, and the whole team and the board. And I just want to say thank you very much, Mark, for taking the time today to have a conversation with myself and folks that are listening in here. Again, this is going to be an amazing conference. I can't wait to be there. I don't know how many notes I've been getting from my colleagues. Notes, emails, texts. Are you going to be there? Because I know so-and-so is going to be there. It is going to be a fantastic kind of reintegration into the three-dimensional world. And I'm really looking forward. Any last words, Mr. Podlasly, before we sign off?
Thank you. I am looking forward to seeing you again in person. We did do the virtual conference last year, but you and I were in the same studio, 6 feet apart from each other. So I am looking forward to seeing you.
Can we do the virtual high five again?
That's right. Can we do that right now? Oh, no, it's the other side. Just so everyone, when you're watching, the event is live. It will be April 25th and 26th in Vancouver. And we will be, you can sign up now, you can log in and order a ticket. If you cannot come to Vancouver and you cannot travel, we will also be broadcasting virtually. So a lot of the speakers will all be available to you. We will be releasing this week the advanced reading for the conference, and that will be available at the FNMPC.ca website. And the conference to register is at FNMPC-industry-event.com. And you'll find all the information there, including the speakers list. JP, you're right. It's an amazing speaker list. The interest has been phenomenal from industry and government and Indigenous people across the Americas. You can find all that online. And I look forward to seeing you and JP and Nilo Edwards, our executive director, Charlene Gale, all of you at the conference in about 3 weeks' time.
Looking forward to, my friend. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. See you there.
Bye.
Bye.